Welcome to the channel English Epics. My name is Travis McKinney. Phyllis and I could easily be described as a typical couple when it comes to likes and dislikes. She has her own hobbies and ambitions, and I have completely different ones. While I play golf and write short stories, she does crafts and is running for a seat on the city council. Unlike state and national level elections, which have official budgets, local elections are mainly funded by friends, family, and a few shady characters looking for future favors. She's quite young compared to the older members of the council, most of whom are currently taking bribes. Like any married couple, we don't always see eye to eye. We have different preferences, different pet peeves, and definitely our own sore spots. For example, when I was 11 years old, I was bitten by a stray dog while playing baseball in Little League. To this day, the hair on the back of my neck stands up whenever I hear a dog growl. I don't like dogs, but Phyllis loves them. Spiders and snakes don't bother me, but wasps absolutely do. On the other hand, Phyllis hates spiders, snakes, and anything else that crawls. Want to see someone act like the world is ending? Catch Phyllis in the moment. A mouse or cockroach crosses her path. Travis, you have to do something. I don't know. What exactly? Just get rid of it. And don't tease me about it. We both love cats, but we don't have any. With our work travel schedules, it's just too difficult to take care of and feed them. Maybe someday our job-related travel will ease up. Who knows? Maybe we'll even have a family in the definitely not before this election is over. I work in forensic accounting, or in simpler terms, I track the money. My files contain information on some of the most ruthless criminals out there. They steal from people who can't afford to be deceived. Phyllis works in public relations at the County General Hospital. She was the face of their community outreach program. Since we're not tied down by any major obligations, we often take trips to warm destinations with beaches. We prefer to stay at all-inclusive resorts that feature open bars. These resorts offer excellent service. As a result, I often end up a bit tipsy. Phyllis has a problem with that. Me being out cold ruins her ability to enjoy herself. Still, in the end, I unwind to escape work stress. To celebrate Phyllis's birthday, we had dinner in a quiet, upscale restaurant. We skipped the dessert and after-dinner liqueurs and hurried home to enjoy ourselves like adults. Sensing that our week-long dry spell might be coming to an end, Phyllis smiled and said, "Well, I'm glad to see you're ready to get back in the saddle." I suggested that Phyllis take one of the little off-limits pills to enhance tonight's experience. While in Mexico, she always buys a few pills for herself and a few blue ones for me. Both tend to make the evening much more enjoyable for us. Since we hadn't been intimate since we got back from vacation last weekend, I noticed that familiar sparkle in her eyes as she gave me a big smile. I guided Phyllis down the hallway to our bedroom. Rose petals were scattered across the bed. A feather lay nearby for tickling her. She's extremely ticklish and often uses our safe word when I go too far with it. I think she secretly enjoys the helpless feeling it gives her. Tonight, that might change. Phyllis peeked into the bedroom. "Oh, wow," she said, grinning. "Looks like I'm in for a treat tonight." "Well, it's your birthday," I replied. I figured I'd do. "Everything right? Go ahead. Take care of what you need in the bathroom and take your pill. I'll be right back." She practically skipped into the bathroom. I headed to the garage to get my bag of surprises. When I returned, Phyllis was lying across the bed, wearing nothing but a wide smile. "Turn over," I said calmly. "Relax, sweetheart. Tonight, something's going to be different." She giggled as she rolled onto her stomach. I took out a pair of plush-lined handcuffs and secured her wrists to the side posts of the bed. Normally, I fasten her hands to the center of the headboard. But tonight, her arms were spread wide, just like her legs. "Yes, I planned this," I said. "Let's see how you like it." After fastening the second wrist, I placed a soft cuff around her ankle, then gently clipped her other leg to the opposite side. Let the games begin. Is someone planning on giving me the full birthday experience tonight? She asked with a playful grin. I've got a couple of new toys to try out tonight, I said. What's our safe word? She asked, just in case she didn't like what I had planned. Usually, our safe words are things like kitten, rainbow, or something equally quirky. As I started to place the gag over her head, Phyllis began to squirm. What are you doing, Travis? All right, your safe word for tonight is midnight sensation. Phyllis gasped and tensed up. No. Last weekend, Phyllis and I booked a trip to Aruba for 4 days and 3 nights. We arrived on Thursday around midday, and I drank way too much, passing out shortly after dinner. The next day, I blacked out even before dinner. God, I felt absolutely terrible Saturday morning. I told Phyllis I wasn't drinking anymore. I was a mess. Obviously, the fact that I got drunk ruined the trip for her. Saying that Phyllis was furious would be an understatement. Instead of waiting for me, she grabbed her bag and headed to the beach without even saying goodbye. Honestly, I didn't need much time to pull myself together, so within a minute, I was out the door. The elevators weren't running efficiently, and I caught a glimpse of Phyllis in a packed elevator, just as the doors were closing. What I actually saw was some guy Phyllis had been flirting with on the first night give her a quick kiss on the cheek and slip her a piece of paper. Instead of waiting for the next elevator, I took the stairs down to the first floor. Phyllis was walking slowly toward the beach exit, reading the note. As she stepped outside, she crumpled the paper and tossed it into a trash bin. Once I got to the bin, I dug through it for a moment. That moment changed my life. Phyllis, the past 2 nights you've been a true midnight sensation. The sex was mind-blowing. We had so much fun, I felt like a king. Too bad he's not drinking tonight. Otherwise, we could have dosed him again. I'll just look forward to seeing you in Sacramento. Until next time, Vince. And that bastard even left his phone number. Well, Vince, my friend, I'm going to make sure you have an unforgettable experience. One you'll never forget. Feeling my head spinning, along with my stomach and my heart, I sat down on one of the benches, seething with rage. What a damn snake she was. Once my fury cooled to something less than raging maniac, I made my way to the front desk. I spent a significant amount of money, after which the assistant manager reviewed the security footage and showed me exactly what Phyllis had been up to the previous 2 nights. He warned me that if I went to the police, they wouldn't open an investigation. Nothing bad ever happens at their resort. Our first evening started with Phyllis and me sitting at a large table with about 10 other people. I was downing drinks and paying a bit too much attention to one of the unaccompanied women. Phyllis didn't like that, so she started focusing on the guy standing next to her, who I now believe was Vince. I was clearly drunk when Vince leaned in and whispered something in her ear. She picked up my glass and handed it to him. A minute. Later, Phyllis was urging me to finish my drink. 15 minutes after that, Phyllis and Vince were helping me back to our room. Vince left 6 hours later, early in the morning. By the evening of the second day, we were lounging on beach chairs when Phyllis got up to grab some drinks. She ran into Vince shortly after bringing our drinks back. Minutes later, Phyllis and Vince were helping me back to the room again. Vince left about 8 hours later. The rest of our trip was incredibly tense. I wanted to kill her, but I knew I needed a plan before doing anything drastic. Sitting in the airport waiting for our return flight, I had plenty of time to think about the right kind of revenge. A sly smile crossed my face when an idea came to mind. Tonight. I don't mind if my ex-wife takes a lover, but she's not my ex-wife. Yet. If you're going to sleep around, at least have the decency to get divorced first. After tonight, I have a feeling she'll be filing the papers. Just a guess. Once the gag was in place, Phyllis couldn't say a word. There were a lot of tears, and a lot of muffled sounds. Rummaging through my bag of treats, I pulled out some silicone-based lubricant. Supposedly, it's flavored. All right, Phyllis, I said. Time for something different. After placing a few pillows under her to elevate her hips, panic set in. Phyllis, began struggling to break free while I applied the lubricant near her backside. Her squirming, oddly enough, made the moment feel even more charged. Though she always claimed to hate this kind of intimacy, she was clearly aroused. That said, we weren't actually going to go through with anything physical, not this or anything else. I wasn't about to risk any infections or diseases. Phyllis turned her head, but her furrowed brow and tears didn't move me. It was time to execute my plan. "Well, Phyllis," I said, "you seem to be enjoying this, but for your birthday, I've got one more surprise." Digging through my utility bag, I pulled out a sealed glass jar in which sat several cicadas and silver beetles. I showed the jar to Phyllis. The insects twitched haphazardly. I continued, "Your soul is buried in your backside, so I'm bringing in these little guys to clean the filth out of it." Phyllis was mumbling and thrashing around, testing the strength of her restraints. It even sounded like she tried to say, "midnight," at one point. I continued my lesson in 101 Grade A nonsense. "Phyllis, there's something you need to know about these insects," I said. "As soon as they find themselves in a warm, dark place, they burrow under the skin and start laying eggs. Around 10 a day, but they hatch pretty quickly. Of course, I plan to put about a dozen of them in there, so do the math. That's a whole swarm of babies, every single day, until someone can dig them out. You'll feel them crawling almost immediately, and the eggs? They're nearly impossible to detect, even for medical professionals." I took one of the dark pillowcases and pulled it over Phyllis's head. She began to struggle. Panic was clearly setting in. Returning to my bag of treats, I placed the insect jar back and took out a small glass vial filled with liquid. Phyllis heard the jar opening, mostly because I did it right above her ear. What a bunch of creepy little guys." In reality, the insects were still safely sealed inside their jar. Instead, I dropped some intimacy beads into a different jar filled with a liquid gel. I also added a bit of anti-itch powder. The packaging had some vague warning about avoiding contact with internal body areas, but I had neither the time nor the interest to read the rest. "Wait, let's sing," I said. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear cheating wife. Happy birthday to you. And here's your first gift," I added, as I inserted one of the beads into Phyllis. My head was spinning as she bucked like a wild bronco. Each time I imagined a bug crawling, I made little disgusted sounds. "You or you-oh. One's trying to escape. Come back here, buddy." I kept inserting the beads, pretending I was stuffing in a dozen insects. With each one, I added another dose of the gel mixed with the itching powder. When I was done, I pulled an empty glass jar out of the bag. "All finished," I said, removing the pillowcase from Phyllis's head and showing her the empty mason jar. She was desperately trying to break free. And just in case that wasn't enough, I grabbed a feather and ran it up and down her soles and underarms for several minutes. I should have filmed it. Phyllis did an incredible job clenching her glutes. When I gently brushed the feather near her most sensitive spot, I think I may have pushed her to the edge. I had never seen such a look of pure hatred and tears in anyone's eyes. Well, no one really knows how a spouse will react when they discover betrayal. "I'm going to grab a beer. Be right back." And I did. I drank a beer, then took the jar of insects outside and released them into the wild. I noticed my arm was itching a bit, and, I've got to say, that powder works. Even after thoroughly washing, the itch remained. Hand lotion seemed to help, though only for a while. About half an hour later, I realized Phyllis was on the verge of losing her mind. The next part of my plan would likely end with bruises and a few hits. What the hell, I used the feather again. Staying mindful of safety, I slowly loosened the straps around her ankles. Then, kneeling on her right arm, I loosened the strap, but kept her wrist firmly in place. Reaching over, I freed her left arm, then quickly jumped off the bed. Phyllis ripped off the gag and immediately reached behind herself with her free hand. "You miserable piece of shit," I'm going to kill you." She started hitting me with the gag for about a minute. I let her bite, kick, scratch, and pound me with her fists. I kept dodging her attempts to damage my more delicate parts. Her itching backside clearly demanded attention, so she paused to scratch herself. While she was using both hands to claw imaginary insects out of herself, I wrapped my arms around her like a bear and guided her toward the front door. She kicked at my shins and scratched at me with her nails. I could have hurt her easily with a solid strike, but I wanted everything to look like I was the innocent victim. So I shoved her away from me and jumped back into the house, locking the door behind me. Phyllis was left outside, naked as the day she was born, alone with the moths and mosquitoes. I might add, she ranted and raged. Loudly. It's all recorded on my phone, including her threats. Time to call for help. "Wevin, what's your emergency?" "My wife took some kind of pill and now she's threatening to kill me. I'm bleeding a little, but I managed to push her out of the house. She's raving about bugs, babies, and blaming me for everything. Please send paramedics, she's completely lost." After confirming my address, they told me that police and paramedics were on the way. I looked out the window and saw Phyllis running across the lawn like a dog with an itchy rear end. She was screaming profanities and loudly promising that I wouldn't live to see tomorrow. She was furiously scratching her arms and legs. A few of our neighbors were enjoying the show. Red and blue lights reflected off nearby houses, drawing even more attention. Everyone got a clear look at Phyllis in all her glory. When she refused to stay still, as ordered by the officers, they tossed her. She was immobilized and handcuffed, which of course prevented her from scratching. The paramedics were told not to administer a sedative, as they didn't know what kind of hallucinogen Phyllis had taken. Strapped to the gurney with her arms and legs secured, Phyllis began telling them about her ordeal. My husband tied me up and shoved insects inside me, and their babies hatched. They're crawling inside me. I can feel them. Get them out. I'm going to kill him. The medics just rolled their eyes. They'd probably seen worse. Phyllis was taken by ambulance to the County General Hospital. While I was giving my statement, the cops photographed my injuries. I told them about the late-night sexual activity and how Phyllis had taken an illegal pill to enhance arousal. Then she started rambling nonsense and became aggressive. I mentioned that she buys the pills in Mexico. Hook, line, and sinker. They told me I could treat my injuries myself, but they also said they were obligated to arrest her for domestic violence and that my consent wasn't necessary. Wow, an unexpected bonus. On top of that, she was also charged with resisting arrest, illegal possession of substances, and smuggling. Now we're talking felonies. I had no idea. Damn, she'd been breaking the law for years. Wearing far more bandages than necessary, I drove to the county hospital to play the role of the concerned and curious husband. My arms were still itching as I tossed the bag containing the jars, beads, and itch powder into a dumpster near the hospital entrance. Emergency rooms are used to this kind of thing. They bend over backward, trying to help a drugged-out lunatic, in the middle of a breakdown. She was dead last on the priority list. They drew some blood to determine what substances were in her system. She was still restrained. They gave her a sedative through and for. She calmed down, for a while, at least. That is, until she saw me. Yeah, they had to give her an even higher dose after that. When they were taking her away, I was told they planned to do a CT scan to definitively prove she wasn't infested with insects. I put on a worried face. It was probably around midnight when the attending physician came to give me an update. "Mr. McKinney, as far as we can tell, your wife had taken ecstasy. Frankly, we've never seen a reaction quite like this. After an enema revealed no foreign objects, we proceeded with a CT scan, which showed absolutely nothing abnormal in the colon or rectal area. However, she did scratch herself quite badly back there. Every time we release her hand, she immediately starts itching again, so we're still keeping her restrained. Even after we showed her the results, She remains convinced she can feel insects crawling inside her and giving birth. We're keeping her overnight for observation. At the moment, she's under the effects of sedatives, and hopefully, once the ecstasy wears off, she'll return to normal. Is she still threatening to kill me? I have to admit, that's very concerning, I said. Yes, we've made a note of that in her chart. As I mentioned, we've never seen a reaction quite like this to ecstasy. I'm sorry. I shrugged, returned to her hospital room, and kissed her, still sedated, on the forehead. All for show. Lying witch. Normally, city council candidates don't get much media attention, but the reporters were thrilled with this ongoing circus. Someone must have called the anonymous tip line before heading to the hospital. City council candidate, charged with domestic violence and resisting arrest. Incident possibly drug-related. Held overnight for psychiatric evaluation. With the evidence provided by the paramedics and the hospital, along with my video, it was incredibly easy to obtain a restraining order requiring Phyllis to stay at least 500 feet away from me. I didn't file for divorce yet. I was waiting to see how everything would play out. Chances were she'd initiate legal proceedings herself. Phyllis's parents visited her the next morning, and the ranting, delusions, and death threats hadn't stopped. I told them about the restraining order and her arrest. They understood and said she was handcuffed to the hospital bed. Normally, overdose. Patients are discharged the next day, but due to Phyllis's insane story about bugs and their babies and her constant urge to scratch that itching area, they kept her for 2 more nights. I figure that's how long it took for the itching compound to wear off. Phyllis eventually appeared before a judge. Due to the drug smuggling charges, bail was set high, but her parents posted it. No one was surprised when I was served with divorce papers the next day. Naturally, the press couldn't resist trying to get a statement from me. Of course, I was still wearing plenty of bandages. Mr. Travis, could you tell us what led to your wife's arrest? Well, Phyllis is a little into bondage, and after we had sex, I started tickling her with a feather. Out of nowhere, she turned into a raging lunatic. As soon as I let her go, she went wild, biting and hitting me. I asked that she not be charged with domestic violence, but apparently that's not up to me. No more questions were asked. Too much information, perhaps. We had officially crossed into the realm of dirty laundry love stories. Phyllis later returned with a sheriff to collect some of her belongings. My attorney had approved only clothing, since everything else was covered under the divorce property agreement. I could tell Phyllis wanted to say something cruel or do something worse, but the sheriff watched her like a hawk. All she could do was glare at me with pure hatred. I pretended to scratch my backside, and she nearly lost it. Phyllis lost the election. The press hounded her over her sex life and mental breakdown. I think she attracted the attention of sharks. A woman into bondage and unconventional sex was definitely seen as chasing. She was reassigned to a permanent position at the hospital. They didn't want her face publicly associated with the institution, but they couldn't legally fire her. Knowing Phyllis was probably planning to give me an unforgettable experience of her own, I quickly found a job overseas. There was no point in tempting the gods of revenge. It also conveniently shielded me from questions when a man named Vince from Sacramento suddenly had his bank and investment accounts wiped out. The article mentioned a loss of over $250,000. Thanks for the phone number, Vince. Those scammers are happy to work freelance. I sent Phyllis a greeting card. A high price to pay for unforgettable nights in Aruba. After the psychiatric evaluation determined that Phyllis was fit to stand trial, she was found not guilty of the domestic violence charge. The charge of resisting arrest was dropped. However, she was convicted of drug smuggling. Her claimed ignorance of breaking the law likely played a role in the plea deal, 60 days behind bars, and a hefty amount of community service. The only thing Phyllis wanted to know during our final Zoom meeting for the divorce was, "When are you going to tell me how you pulled it off? Seriously? You don't even regret destroying our marriage? I'm just glad to be rid of you." Screw you, asshole. Just tell me about the bugs. There were no bugs. I just tickled you. What you need to tell me is why you did it. You could have just asked for a divorce instead of breaking your vows. There were bugs. Just tell me. Please. And that's how our marriage ended. I don't plan on returning to the States. If you had seen the look in Phyllis's eyes, you'd agree with me completely. I think there's still something wrong with her backside. I've started dating again, but I'm not really interested in anything. Long-term commitments, it seems, come with flaws that sometimes need correcting. All right, I'll stop with the insect references. Still, I wonder, every time Phyllis feels an itch back there, does she think the babies are hatching? Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.